Skype doesn't make it any clearer. It's as good as it's gonna get.
Nope.
But thank you guys for taking the time to come and chat with us today. And I know you're very busy with Hero U and everything, and we just really appreciate you taking some time with us.
Thank you. We're happy to be here.
We are.
All right, so we have a vast past of experiences to discuss, and the present and the future, and we're just going to divide it up chronologically. And Mouse, why don't you go ahead and take the lead on that?
All right. Lori, Corey, thank you so much for joining us. And there are some people out there who are younguns and they have not had the pleasure to play your games yet, although they should. As soon as this interview is over, you guys should go and look for their games with the Quest for Glory series at GOG.com. We don't get paid by GOG, disclaimer, but that's where you can find them.
So.
Nor do we.
We continually ask GOG to pay us. If they would pay you, that would also be nice.
Yeah.
That'd be good.
That would be good. So, since you guys worked with on Sierra Online in the game Quest for Glory series, how about you tell us a little bit of how you two came to be the dynamic duo that you are today? Like how you met, how did you find each other?
So, all Dungeons and Dragons.
Yes. I was visiting my aunt in San Francisco at the time, and there was this convention there that they were having. It was called WesterCon. And I thought, gee, I'd love to go to a science fiction convention while I'm here. So I just went out of my comfort zone and went to the con by myself, with a cousin. And I happened to meet Corey there.
And a few days earlier, before the con, a few months earlier, I'd gone to a few conventions in Los Angeles, and I started getting together with people at the USC Science Fiction Club. Even though I did not attend USD, I'd never been there. And one day they said, hey, we're all going up to WesterCon in San Francisco. You want to come along? It's going to be fun. And I said, well, sure. So we packed about 8 of us into a van somehow and proceeded to drive up to San Francisco. And we're all crashing in one hotel room with 2 beds. I had a nice spot in the closet.
Like my first anime con.
So it was wild and crazy times, and this was the only convention I ever brought a costume to. I had put together a Balrog costume with the help of a seamstress friend, and
is there photographic evidence of that?
Thank goodness, no.
I'm jealous regardless.
I did not win. Anyway, so I had a few months earlier come out with it's all these little threads all roll together. A few months earlier had finally gotten one of my gaming modules published. It was called The Tower of Indomitable Circumstance, and just that's a whole other story. I won't go into the details, but anyway, that was in the process of being published, and I was demoing it in the gaming room at WesterCon. And this really cute, redhead or blonde?
I was
at the
blonde.
time. This cute blonde walks in, and I say, "Hey, we need more." Oh, she says, "I'm looking for a game." She says, "We need more players." So,
Yes, he invited me to play, and so therefore we kind of latched on to each other for the rest of the convention. But I was living over in Arizona, and I was living on an Indian reservation where I had no phones, no television. Total isolation, so all we could do was write to each other with letters, the physical things. No computers, no nothing, the total, lost on an island. And so we did write letters for many years.
well, the first one was very strange. I got a postcard in the mail. It was a picture postcard, and had some wonderfully lyrical writing about, the beautiful sunset and stuff like that. And I said, ooh, this is tough. I'm going to have to, respond in kind. I don't ever do that. So I wrote a kind of somewhat mocking thing back, talking about the beauty of my view of the power poles outside my apartment and so on. Tried to respond in kind.
Yeah, it was really kind of sweet. So that's why we stuck it out. Yes, it was dorky. So
let's say, Lori had a theatrical background, so she helped me put on makeup and stuff like that at the con. So
Oh,
Nice. So gaming kind of brought you together.
gaming brought us together. There's no doubt about it. And gaming has been our life ever since.
And you have a lot of a very diverse background between the two of you. I mean, you have your background in education, Lori, and Corey, you have your background in design and programming. When did you decide to make games for? With each other.
Well, I had come from a background where we always had games in the household. We had one of the first handheld kind of games that little mini game computers that you held in your hand. We had, my brother and I had a game maker box that had all sorts of bits and pieces to make games. So my family was always into games from the practical board game standpoint.
we should get one of those. Maybe it would help us learn how to design.
I had never touched a real computer though until I met him, because there were no computers in my school.
So I grew up with board games, Clue and Monopoly and all that sort of thing. I played a lot of Stratego, I seem to recall. Computers, my brother got into it first. When he was in college, he got one of the early IMSI S100 bus kits and put together his own computer. And I went to a show where they were showing off the very first Apple IIs. And I said, that looks pretty awesome. It's got color and everything. But it connected to your TV set. And I didn't own a TV. So I ended up building myself an S100 bus system instead so I could share my brother's software. I probably would have gotten into games 5 years earlier if I'd gotten the Apple.
But we had been playing games together on the computer when we got together. And
Did?
yes, we did. We played all sorts of games like Dungeon Master and things like that.
Oh, yeah.
And mostly it meant Corey was playing and I was kibitzing, or a few friends got together and kibitzed over a game.
Nice.
And so it became a social experience, but we were kind of frustrated with the way games were designed then. They were limited, and they were so not really, they called themselves role-playing games, but they were nothing like D&D. There was no character, there was no story. It was just a dungeon run, and we really wanted to have story.
Yeah, I had actually moved up to the San Francisco Bay Area, both because I had some friends up there, but also I was trying to break into the game industry. I ended up taking a non-gaming job for a little company called Pyceon, making word processing systems, and that led to a job at Olivetti.
Mm-hmm.
So I was up there, and Lori, wasn't comfortable moving somewhere without having a base, but her aunt and cousin both lived in the Bay Area, so I was willing to talk her out into coming out there, as opposed to coming down to LA where she didn't know anyone.
Yeah.
So I was trying to get into games about 5 years before I actually went to work for Sierra.
Oh.
You know,
And how did you, Sierra? Oh, 1 second. Okay, there we go.
Mouse has audio issues all over himself.
Oh my.
That was not my fault. That was your fault.
I am blaming you. I'm just still blaming you. But so how did you two end up at working at Sierra?
It was again through science fiction conventions. We had gotten into a thing called folk music, which is science fiction themed folk music, and some people in the Bay Area that had met at conventions decided to start having little get-togethers, folk circles, bardic circles in people's houses, and we were fairly active with that group. And one of them was Carly Hawksdaughter, and she had grown up in Coarsegold near Oakhurst, where Sierra is, and therefore had been tapped by them to do animation for King's Quest IV. And she said, "Hey, I was in a big meeting that they had, basically all the artists and designers and stuff get together, and Ken Williams said, we own the adventure game market. We used to publish Ultima, but we don't have Ultima anymore. We need a new Ultima. We need a role-playing game so we can get back into that market." And so they said, we've got to find the absolute top rank, tournament-winning, professional, published dungeon master, or some such string of phrases, words that didn't mean anything together. And so Carly talked to us and said, "Hey, you guys are, dungeon masters. what do you think about going out there and doing this?
And so, therefore, Corey went out there and applied for a job.
And Ken Williams was like, yeah, you want to be a game designer, huh? Well, everybody that works for me wants to be a game designer. What makes you any better? I said, well, I've worked 10 years as a professional programmer, so I know how to talk to the programmers when I'm doing design. And said, wait a second, Carly didn't tell me you were a programmer. and what have you been doing lately? I said, well, I've been developing my own desktop publishing system on the Atari ST. He says, you know how to program the ST? And I said, yeah. And he says, okay, you're hired. Well, actually not, but I got a live interview, and that led to a job and a major pay cut.
Yes.
Nice.
And then a few months later...
Just so everyone knows, the video is frozen, but we're still getting the audio. So let's just keep going.
Oh, great. Yes, well, that's fine. So I was the one that actually applied for the game development at Sierra after that. And so we had come up with the idea for a game called Hero. Well, we wanted to do their game, but when we saw the systems that Sierra had in place and all the building blocks of game making they had ready to use, it was not ideal for what was being done in role playing. So we decided to integrate their system with what role-playing should be. We wanted to bring the promise of what real D&D does in games, is have real characters or real stories, and we could use their system to do it.
Yeah, we wanted to get something that would actually work with the tools they had without having to completely reinvent the wheel. Because, you think about role-playing games like Ultima and those things, is they're all basically out in a 2D map. You got little stick figures moving around, and it's basically really a text game and a map. Whereas Sierra games were all oriented around the artwork. They were, first person perspective. Oh, no, actually,
they're
no,
not.
third person perspective.
They were like a scene. They were like watching a stage set, and you'd have your character moving around a stage. And we knew we could tell a good story with this system. So that was the important part.
Yeah. So trying to make a game that would actually work in Sierra tools, and then I built a role-playing layer on top of them. But it's a question of do you animate stuff? Do you show what's going on, or do you just have little stick figures going around? And Lori, from a theatrical background, wanted to tell visual stories.
Yes. The animation at the time on a role-playing game looked like characters were doing jumping jacks on the screen, and that was about the height of their animation ability. Yeah. Whereas Sierra was doing very sophisticated animation, and I'd also come from an education that included 2 years of animation because I wanted to be in the industry of animation, so this all went really nicely into being a game designer.
Yeah, Sierra had an unusual concept of a director for a game that basically was just impossible. Nobody had all these qualifications because they wanted somebody who could manage a team, somebody who could design games, somebody who could write, somebody with some artistic skill that could draw storyboards and stuff, and obviously someone who knew the subject space. So they wanted about 6 different requirements that nobody ever has, but just by coincidence, Lori had all of them. Yeah. Or between Lori, I guess they wanted programming.
The two, yes.
Yeah, they wanted programming too, so that was my part.
Right, so between the two of us, we had everything that Sierra thought you needed to have for a game designer. And that was true for the first game, and then they started realizing they put more people in and more roles were taken to other people's.
Lori, didn't you also have an background in education as well?
Yes. I was a teacher. That's why I was off on the Indian reservation.
Did that ever play a part in your design concepts? Or
yes. Okay. One of the most influential books that I had from my education career was called "Teaching as a Subversive Activity." And basically, the take I got on that is that anything can teach, and you learn more when you aren't being taught, quote unquote. And so the thought was that this game would teach a lot of things. I mean, it would teach values mostly, because it's all about learning how to be a hero in the course of the game. And so by experiencing it, by being this character on the screen, you learn these lessons in a way that's organic.
And we taught a lot of lessons we didn't know we were teaching. So, for instance, we started getting letters from people that said, they were, 4 years old or 6 years old or whatever when they started playing Heroes Quest, and were completely confused on it. But they learned how to spell, how to type, how to read by playing the games.
They learned English because
That was me. That was me.
Uh-huh. Yes, so we were teaching a lot of things, and we also we started out by having a very comfortable story. It was set in a Germanic villa, and it was in this little valley, and we wanted it to be very familiar to anybody that's ever read fairy tales and that, so they knew what we had. And are we still here? Are we still on?
You're still here.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Because all the video froze now.
Yeah, the video's frozen again, but it comes back. So let's just.
Okay. But we wanted to take the player where he'd never been before. So the first story was in this comfortable little Germanic setting, but the next setting we went to the Arabian Nights and told, tropes that were not tropes at the time, but those tropes that made the Arabian Nights special.
And of course, we knew these things mostly from reading like the Andrew Lang's colored fairy tale books, the Green Fairy book, and so on when we were kids. So we decided if we're going to do this game, we got to research it seriously. And amazingly, at a used bookstore, we came across a complete set of the 1001 Arabian Nights, translated by Richard Burton. I think it was 12 volumes.
12 volumes of it.
And so we started reading through those, and we loved the whole idea of Scheherazade and the idea of telling stories within stories. If you aren't familiar with the Scheherazade story, basically she had married, a monster of a man who, slept with each of his wives for one night and then murdered them. And she said, well, of course, I'm your wife and you have the right to do that, no problem. But first let me tell you a story. And he said, okay, fine. And what she would do is, instead of telling a complete story, is she got to a cliffhanger.
She was the first serial creator.
Yes.
She would always end on a cliffhanger. So that was the theory that we were actually doing with our game, too.
And so she'd tell a kind of a straightforward story, and then in the middle of it, she'd come across the old beggar, and the guy says, why should I listen to you? And then in the middle of this story, the beggar would say, well, I'm a beggar now, but once I was something much more. And then he starts spinning a tale. So it's stories within stories. And so we tried to, if we knew what we were doing today, we would have said this was absolutely impossible to do with the computer time. Fortunately, we were naive. So we tried to make all those tales within tales in a computer game.
Well, one of the good things about really world building in an appropriate way is you don't want just one story. You want your NPCs to have a life, so they all have their own stories, and they're just stories interacting with one another. So, having that background and that flair just adds depth to everyone you encounter.
One thing I really am is a role player. I mean, I'm really into my characters. All have personalities, and their personalities are like little encoded people in my head. So I know how they think, I know how they'd act, and so when I'm doing a D&D scenario and that, I can be very scary at times because I really think like how that person is and not how I am. And so writing characters for games and that is very easy. And one thing we wanted to do is have this game was proposed as a series, and the characters would follow through. I mean, you'd meet characters from the first game in subsequent games, so that you had the sense of continuity and a sense that this was a real world and these people were real and they affected you and their lives were affected by what you did in the game.
And that approach kind of informed the storytelling. So rather than saying, okay, we're telling a story or we're going to have these puzzles and we'll do an adventure game where we've got this cool idea for a puzzle, what we really did is Lori created the characters first, and then we said, okay, what kind of problems does this character have in that setting? And we tried to find what I referred to as the elbow of the problems, the connecting joint that said, okay, here's the one place where an outsider coming in can make a difference in this person's life. And so the games are really character-centric. The story is, is all derives out of the characters.
And the setting too, because the
setting
setting will create a lot of the puzzles. For instance, we knew in Quest for Glory 2, Trial by Fire, we had the Arabian Nights setting, we had a theme of elementals, and we also had a theme that, to mix our metaphors, we also had this terror. We had this lovely little city that you start out in, and then we had its dark mirror image, like something out of the Star Trek Dark Universe, the Dark Mirror.
Yes.
And it paralleled the first. Everything that was right about the first city was wrong in the second, because it was totalitarian and dictatorship, and it was all dark and things. And it was like working for Sierra.
We had a rough time during Quest for Glory 2, yeah.
Yeah, it's like, it was also the story.
It was good and bad.
Yes. The experience for Quest for Glory 1 was wonderful. It was an incredible experience. By game 2, it suddenly became the totalitarian dictatorship at Sierra, and it was very rough. It was very hard to work there. But we worked it through, and, we had a lot of fun with it, even though it was hard,
One year Sierra decided they wanted to improve the quality of their managers, and so they brought someone in to do a management workshop, and I managed to get in on that. And we did a series of projects where he would split us up into 3 teams, and we would compete against each other. And one of them was a thing of taking like straws and toothpicks or something and building a tower. It was to be judged by height and stability and beauty. And to the guy who was giving the trainings, Shock, the winning team, what he did is he took us each in the hallway and whispered instructions. So I was told to be a totally totalitarian manager.
No, you were...
I was the totalitarian.
Oh, you were the totalitarian.
Okay, I was told not to listen to anybody on my team and tell them all what to do. Another guy was going to be democratic and work with them and listen to their suggestions and come to consensus. And the third guy was going to be basically totally ineffectual. He was going to be the laissez-faire and let the team do whatever they wanted and try to get in their way as much as possible. By basically not doing anything useful and not accepting any suggestions and so on. Anyway, to everyone's shock, except the people working at Sierra, the laissez-faire team won. And the trainer said in 20 years of doing this training, he had never seen the laissez-faire team win before. So I said, well, that's nothing new. That's the way all management at Sierra is done.
Oh, God. We had just not to hijack the interview, but we...
Oh, no.
Last place I worked, we had a very similar situation where we had our team, which was customer care, and the training team. We both answered to the same management, and we were doing similar type of leadership team building, but ours was to build a helicopter and escape the island. And so the training team thought that they were just going to dominate us. They just basically jumped in there and assigned tasks out and everything. Meanwhile, my team had, I hate to sound sexist about this, had 2 guys and 3 ladies. And the 2 guys just happened to be very technical. That would be me and my friend Michael. And we literally just took the pieces and started assembling a helicopter. The ladies sat back and watched. They had nothing to contribute. They had no comment. They basically said, so what are we going to do when we get off the island? Literally about a minute and a half later, we were done. We had no instructions. We just put the helicopter together. We're like, we're off. There was no instruction, no nothing. We just did it. And the guy just kind of looked at us and like, you're done? Yep, we're off.
Cece and I can't comment on this because singers can't build. It usually takes one singer to build the tower and the second singer to go, well, I could do that if I could go that high. But
yeah, but I can sing louder. My support is better.
So
I think you probably had a very important support role. I just saw something on Facebook that I had to laugh at because it said, things like this interview, for instance, that when you get a man and a woman together, the man ends up doing about 90% or 80% of the talking. And so I'm intentionally trying not to talk as usual in this. That means I'm down to 60 or 70%.
But that's the story of our life, where you have to fight for your rights here. You have to talk,
Yeah.
Asher knows exactly how that is. I usually stifle the poor thing.
We have a question from Moonshine Theliocat. He wants to know what exactly he or she, I don't know this person, wants to know exactly what were your roles in the Quest for Glory. They said, were you a programmer, designer? Was it some kind of a combination of the two? What exactly did you do with Quest for Glory?
It all depended upon which game we were talking about. For the first game, I was the writer, I was the director, I was the project manager, and Corey was my lead programmer for part of it.
Yeah, and we were co-designers. We both came up with the original concepts together, and most of the setting and stuff like that. Lori did pretty much throughout the series. Lori did virtually all the dialogue. I wrote a couple characters in a couple of the games, but mostly Lori did everything. And then the programming team, including me, wrote almost all those silly punny messages when you look at things and stuff like that. So pretty much all the object interactions were written by the programmers, and then the overall storyline, where the characters were, what the characters said, and so on, that was all Lori. Then we had
it really
artists.
depended upon which game you're talking about, because by game number 3, Corey was doing a programming job on a different project for most of it.
Yeah, I started out in my Sierra. My first year was converting the Sierra system to run on the Atari ST, which is why Ken was so excited when he found out somebody that I actually knew the ST. And then we started out on Heroes Quest, and Lori came in about 8 months after I started. Then, as you said, so we got through 2 games, and we were intending to start in the 3rd game, and they threw in the monkey wrench that, okay, we've got adventure games, we've got a role-playing game now. Now we need educational games. So Ken Williams immediately turned the entire company into coming up with ideas for educational games. And I did Castle Dr. Brain, and Lori did Mixed Up Fairy Tales. And so we took a year away from Quest for Glory to do that. Then we came back to Quest for Glory 3, or at least we would have, except at this point, Ken decided that we needed to get the console market as well as PCs. And Sega Genesis had a thing called the Sega Genesis CD. And we said, okay, Dynamics, which was our kind of sister company, was doing really well. And then they said, okay, Corey, we want you to, you did the Atari ST stuff, so we want you to do the interpreter for the Sega Genesis CD. So Lori was off in Quest for Glory 3 and a remake of Quest for Glory 1 while I was off doing programming.
Yep. And so therefore, at that point, I was mostly just a writer-designer for that. I did the map layouts, the characters in the story, and then writing all the dialogue. And our games are hugely dialogue-intensive because they really are about interacting with characters. And so it was just a long writing experience for that.
So we got through 3. I came in about a month or 2 from the end and did editing and stuff, and had some interesting interactions with our producer, who wanted to rewrite text for political correctness in ways that didn't quite work.
Oh gosh.
Yes, because game number 3 was set in Africa, and it was set in it basically takes our white blonde hero and throws him into an African, whole different cultural setting with nobody looking like him, and he is the outsider, and he has to learn how to learn about cultural relativity and adapt to this and make friends and save the world at the same time.
And we had seriously mixed races. We had the lion tar people that are lion centaurs. We had the shape-changing people that could change their shapes into leopard men and leopard women. What was the tribe that was against the leopard men?
The Simbani. The Simbani were based off of the Maasai warriors.
So the Maasai warriors.
We had done, research into African cultures and things like that, and then of course we had created this culture for the lion tar creatures that had their own society and their rules, and they were very they were very lawful, and they were law with a capital L. You could not break laws. So you had to learn, the values of the society and what to do with your life. So that was game number 3.
Yeah, by the way, all Disney movies during the 90s were based on Quest for Glory games.
Yeah, clearly.
Can't remember which one they had after Heroes Quest, but after we did Trial by Fire set in the Arabian Nights, they came out with Aladdin, and
then we had Lion King.
Yeah, they had Lion King was clearly based on Quest for Glory 3. Hercules was based on 5. I'm not sure what they based on.
Really.
Transylvania game.
But our game number 4 was the game we'd been wanting to make from the beginning, which was the pastiche and the homage to all of the old horror tropes of the old horror movies. So we're definitely having vampires, werewolves, sort of. We put our spin on everything. We had ghost stories. And then it was set in Mordavia, Transylvania area. So therefore, it had to have some of the local mythology of that area. So we had the Rusalka, we had Vichy, we had the Domovoi, all of those from the Slavic / Ukrainian stories and the myths of that land, to bring those as to part of this.
We'd already had Baba Yaga as a major enemy in the first game, so we brought her back, of course.
Because this was her homeland. Yeah. This is where the stories came from. And so we explored mythologies of these areas, as well as explored the great stories of horror movies and the classic horror movies, and Lovecraft overtones.
And I actually got to work in that game. That was the only one of the series where I was a full-time designer and writer, and I didn't have any programming responsibilities. I wasn't off on another project. So that's why 4 is much more puzzle-oriented than some of the other games, is because, that's kind of my thing, is more the puzzles. So I had done Castle of Dr. Brain, so we put Dr. Cranium, Dr. Brain's distant ancestor, into Quest for Glory 4, and he had the same kind of puzzles that were in Castle of Dr. Brain. So we really had the kitchen sink.
Yes, and once you put all these things together, you have to have humor, because, the humor is so important. So you get a little dash of everything in.
The chat.
If I was just going to say, if you watch a dramatic movie, it's not all drama.
No.
Exactly.
There's always humor, because otherwise the drama gets so intense that you can't handle it.
Exactly.
That's something I've been talking to people for ages, because they love... Nowadays there is this trend in modern storytelling, in comics and in movies, where there's this whole concept of, if we're gloomy and dark and dramatic all of the time, we're doing mature storytelling. But that's not the way it goes.
No, we really, we call it the roller coaster. You have to have a roller coaster of emotions, or if it's all on the same level, it gets dull and your senses are bored. Your brain reacts to change. So you can have wonderful moments of comedy and still have this drama. There are 2 characters in that game series that people really related to, and one was Arana. Arana was was not even in the game until the end of 4, and you could bring her back in 5, but she was this symbol. She was this woman who went around making beautiful little places of peace that you could go to in the middle of all this, dangerous territory. You would find this little oasis of peace and beauty, and it was created by Arana. And so you got to learn more about who she was in the course of the series, but you never actually met her when she was alive, And the other character was this character that we come up with in game number 4, which was the Dark Master. And you play the game not knowing who the Dark Master is until you find out it's this beautiful...
You're going to do a spoiler?
I'm going to do
Spoilers.
Spoiler alert!
Don't listen. Cover your ears.
Yes, cover your ears if you want to play this game. The Dark Master was this beautiful woman who turns out to be a vampire, and you get to learn her story, and you get to learn why she is the way she is, and that she really was and she tried to have love in her life. And she, of course, eventually falls for the hero if the hero's doing, behaving like a hero. She has to overcome her own cynicism to learn that he is a real hero.
Well, she doesn't fall for him in game 4. She kind of likes him.
She falls for him enough to save his life. I would say that was pretty
Yeah.
falling for him.
Oh, I don't know.
Spoilers.
If you were in trouble, I'd probably save your life too.
Yeah, really.
CC, you want to grab that question from Chad?
Thank you for that question.
Well, this question they've kind of answered it already, but it's what are your thoughts and experiences with Shadows of Darkness? As an aside, the dialogue work and attention to human interaction in the Quest for Glory series always impressed me, especially considering how little it occurs in video games. And then there was this whole aside where everybody talked about how they loved the voice acting in Shadows of Darkness.
That's where we were gonna
I get to talk about the voice acting. Voice acting on Shadows of Darkness was amazing.
But the only reason we had voice acting is because they released the game
Too soon.
too soon. We
Yes.
had 1 week of testing when we came out with Quest for Glory 4.
Quest
It
for-
had no voice at that time. It was not supposed to have voice, but they didn't test the game, and it was unplayable. It was so full of bugs, it was an abomination.
Well, it shipped on floppy disk, so it must have been like 12 high-density floppy disk. I don't know what it was up to by that time, but each of our
Something
games
like that.
each of our games got lower. I think the first game was something like 9 low-density and 4 high-density floppy
It was
disks.
4 high-density floppy disks, I remember.
Yeah. It completely blew away all of Sierra's, cost requirements and so on. One of the most expensive builds they had. So by 4, basically, we had this. As we said, we talked about all the things that were in the game. Well, there's a corollary to that, and that's impossible to do in the 1 year we had for each game. So when they released it in a year, the game didn't work, and basically they shipped a very, very buggy version on floppies. And at this point, everything was going over to CDs, and they were starting to do the voice acting and so on. So someone, somewhere along the line, talked management into fixing all the bugs in the game and re-releasing it as a CD release with voices. I don't know who championed on it.
I don't know, but it was.
It was a miracle.
Talk about roller coaster rides. We were so proud of Quest for Glory 4 when we were making it because it was a beautiful game. It had great art direction. It was. It had the mood and the style we wanted. And then they release it, and it's awful. It was just such a piece of garbage when it was released. It's like the elation of the high of getting the game right and beautiful, and then finding out it's unplayable is just like, it's just heartbreaking.
Yeah, I remember
really.
we had a meeting with the lead programmer with management, and basically they said, we really need to get a game out this fall, and we said it's not ready, and they basically asked the lead programmer. He said, basically, my team is so burned out. We've been doing overtime for 2 or 3 months now.
No, 6
6
months.
months? 6 months of overtime?
Of overtime. So
And
they burned out the team.
they were exhausted, and we said, we can't possibly, go any longer in this. We need to move on to something else.
And therefore, they released it like that. And it took a year to release the voice acting one.
So the voice acting, they worked out a contract with. We had a professional Hollywood voice director, and I went down and we did auditions. He sent us a bunch of digital tapes.
And we had some great voices.
Yeah.
We had some awesome voices there, and we didn't even pick some of the big names that we actually had for voice acting.
Yeah, so we picked the ones who were most appropriate for the role. So we had some major actors we didn't use. And by some coup or other, we managed to get John Rhys Davis,
Yes.
Gimli the Dwarf, as the narrator. And I got to go down there to North Hollywood and do the. He called me the producer, but I basically sat there and ran the.
He was a technician.
I was really the technician. Got a laptop just for the occasion. Recorded all the voices, and we got to John Rhys Davis' part, and he'd been told he had X number of lines, 5,000 lines or whatever it was, 3,000 lines. And the problem is that when you're doing animation work, a line is, look over there. And when you come to Quest for Glory 4, a line is a full paragraph.
Yes.
Yeah.
And he realized that there was, he had a vacation scheduled for like 1 week later, And he saw he was going to have to cancel his vacation plan, so he said, okay, forget all this queuing business and so on. Drop all that. I'm just going to read all these lines straight through. And he proceeded to, there's also a limit of 4 hours per session. He went 6 hours a session, broke a few union rules, and just got almost everything on the first take. And then we spent the next 3 months trying to figure out how to break up all these things into sound files. But just unbelievable. Unbelievable to work with. Mouse, you mentioned you were a Jack Nicholson fan.
Yes, I am.
My Jack Nicholson story was we were trying to do the voices for Hans, Franz, and Yvonne, and our director, Stu Rosen, says, okay, do any of you guys do like celebrity voices we can do? And one guy says, oh, yeah, I do a great Jack Nicholson. He did just a perfect Jack Nicholson. And the next guy says, oh, I do a great Jack Nicholson, too. And he did a perfect Jack Nicholson, but it was different. And we said, well, we can't have 2 Jack Nicholsons, or can we? And so we decided to have 2 Jack Nicholsons, and I forget which character was the third one.
I was Rodney Dangerfield.
Was it Reggie?
Yes. I mean, those were the voices they were doing. And then threw away my script.
Yeah, then they said, can we ad-lib?
They had all these 3 actors. Mostly people do these things in isolation. You don't talk to other people. But we had the 3 character actors, voice actors, in the same place at the same time. So then they improv'd their lines.
Was it Jeff Bennett was one of them, I think?
I think so.
Yeah, anyway, so some well-known people had done a lot of, great animation work and so on. And they just started really going crazy with the script. And I thought about it, okay, it's not the script, but this is pretty funny. It works, so I stayed with it.
So the funny part was, of course, that on the CD you had them talking in dialogue. It showed the words they were supposed to be saying, and then they're going off on their riffs of improv. And it was a very funny, combination with 2 Jack Nicholsons and 1 Rodney Dangerfield. These are not the voices I ever envisioned for it either, but it was so much fun that it didn't matter.
So Quest for Glory 4 was definitely the roller coaster for us, because we were having a wonderful time doing the game. We had incredible music, wonderful artists. Mark Hudgens was the lead artist, and he came out with the art style and the cartoony characters and so on. It's just absolutely everything was perfect. And then they released the game before 3 to 6 months before it was done.
Yes, and then we got the voice acting, and we had, John Rhys Davies, and that's just perfect. I would not want a better person for that. Yeah. And so, yes. And then they fired us after that. So.
Yeah. So we had a 3-game contract. I can't remember. I think it was the first game of the contract. Might have been the second. And they proceeded to lay off about half the company and said, "Oh, by the way, we're canceling your contract." We're online. We're live.
To people.
We're live.
Yes.
My mom just walked up. So.
Hi,
Mom.
Hi.
So anyway, yes.
So it was the ups and downs. In the end, I think it turned out to be the best game we've done, but it still had, even in the CD version, there were crashing bugs and so on. It wasn't quite 100% solid. But
and then eventually they brought us back because the company had totally changed. It brought us back to Game 5 because Game 4 left off in kind of a cliffhanger type of ending. It was supposed to be, and then the game was over. We couldn't end the story. We had all the story that was still left, all these threads that we couldn't bring back together. And it wasn't for another 4 years before we were rehired by Sierra.
The fans staged a massive letter writing campaign. Sierra got thousands of letters of people saying, you gotta bring back Quest for Glory, have to finish this series. And then they eventually brought Lori in for something else.
Yeah. They were
the Realm.
Yes, they were going to figure out how to shoehorn this old game system, this RPG system, and they thought they could put Quest for Glory World over it.
Actually, at the time, it was brand new.
No, it wasn't. It had been out for 4 years, and Yosemite Entertainment got hold of it.
All right, the Realm. So that was Sierra's version of World of Warcraft before there was a World of Warcraft.
I remember that. Yes. I was in Ecuador at the time and I couldn't play it. I wanted to play it. It looked so cool in the magazines, but I was like, Mom, do you think we could get this? And in Ecuador, we still had like the old copper wire, telephone wires, and I was like, hijacking the telephone line for like 10 hours a day. And so she just looked at me and said, "You do that, I will kick you out."
Ah, wise.
I did that as an adult. We were, the bulletin board systems we were on, the pre-Sierra years were all dial-up. And so our phone was, off the hook for hours at a time. And people tried to call us and wonder why they couldn't get through. We didn't have cell phones and stuff.
I was very much the same way. I used to run a BBS and had to eventually get my own line, probably sooner than my family would have wanted. And as soon as, and here I am, I'm the big proponent of I hate phones, so I refuse to have one now. But I had to have that phone then because landline, I had to have my BBS, and I was addicted to watching that all day long.
I think actually even during our post-Sierra years, we, in order to get DSL access at our home, we had to get a separate phone line. So,
So we're working on the Realm, or...
Well, we didn't actually work in the Realm. So they had this meeting, brought Lori in, I think they brought me in too, and said, okay, we want to rebrand the Realm as World of Quest for Glory.
Or something like
something
that.
like that. World of Glory. And they said, we want you to put some quests and stuff in there. And the thing is, they were 3 months from launching this re-release of the Realm. And we said, okay, what kind of quests do you have in there so far? Well, they didn't have any. Never put any thought into the concept of content. They basically had a thing where you could walk around and talk to characters and fight and stuff. And there was no content in the sense of a modern RPG. And we're kind of like, we don't think this can be done.
Yeah, so Corey went to work somewhere else. And I was still hanging around the Oakhurst area. And we had split, and Sierra had split up. Most of it had gone north to the land of no income tax, no state income tax.
Oregon.
Also known as Seattle.
Yes.
Oh.
Yes. So see, it
Sales
had
tax, sorry.
save tax things.
It was so Ken Williams and Roberta Williams wouldn't have to pay as much. No, actually, the real reason was supposedly that they could not get marketing people to move out to the Sierras.
Oh, that's right.
That's their theory, anyway. But
we knew why they had moved up there.
Yeah.
So, right. But we had a house. We had this ranch we own out there with deer and mountain lions and bears and other things. So
rattlesnakes.
We weren't going to leave anytime soon because you couldn't sell it for one thing. So therefore I was still in the area, and Corey was in the Bay Area at the time when they brought me back in and said, well, we'll make a new game.
We'll make Quest for Glory 5.
We'll make Quest for Glory 5, but it's going to be done 3D. And that was a fiasco. But, 3 years later, I actually, had the chance to make a really cool game and got to do what I needed to do, which was close the story for all these different characters. And all these character threads that I had left dangling along the way got to come in and have a big culmination in this game. And that's just what I needed. I wanted to give the players this chance to say the story has come to a good ending.
Mm-hmm. So, story-wise, it definitely does what it needs to do. Graphics-wise, we completely redid the graphics at least twice during it.
3 times.
3 times?
Mm-hmm.
Well, was there something Axel?
No, but it needed 3 times.
Yeah, we had seen a Russian company demo a technology called voxels, which are 3D surfaces instead of using triangles and stuff for doing 3D surfaces. And it looked really good and had some big advantages. They also wanted, I think, $50,000 or something for the license, and Sierra didn't want to pay that. And lead programmer for Quest for Glory said, "Oh, no problem, I can make a voxel engine," and he did. He was actually a genius, Eric Lingale. Made a voxel engine. The only problem is we got a year into development and started doing our first full-scale tests, and we discovered that it was fine when the characters were in the background. When they moved up into the foreground, on an average machine, it started going to like 1 frame per second, 2 frames per second. And we said, we can't ship a game like that. And we said, well, can we just not let the characters get that large. Well,
we did that we tried that. We actually
that got us up to 5.
Yes, we found out. We kept trying all these technical ways of doing it. It didn't work, and we kept making more art and things, and the decision kept getting put off. And finally, after 2 years, they made the decision: we can't do this. We have to restart over and do it with another animation system.
Right. So the next logical thing to do would be to look at things like Unreal Engine and stuff like that and come up with a good off-the-shelf 3D engine. But fortunately, our lead programmer stepped in and...
Our lead programmer was the genius, so therefore he had to go...
He said, no problem, I can write a 3D polygon engine, and he did.
So that meant all the art had to be redone for that. But in the meantime, I'm able to write. You know, I'm having the freedom to design this thing out and really get it right. And we were going to, I had to write the scripts out ahead of time because we were going to have localization. I spent a science fiction convention where we were supposed to be. We went to in Dallas or what? Austin. We were there for a vacation, and I spent a whole day and a half writing a script so that the next week they could send it to Ireland to have localization done there. And, of course, the game was not released for another year and a half. But,
so the good news about that is, well, besides Lori getting to do more writing, is the music for the games normally was shoehorned into the games about 3 months before release. It was they brought the musician in as the last step of it. And I can tell you, all of our games were absolutely horrible until the music came in. We hated them all. They were just no fun at all. The music comes in, all of a sudden they're wonderful. Well, this one, we had Chance Thomas, who was a Hollywood composer with some pretty serious credits behind him, came in, and he was brought in near the beginning of the project, and this 1.5-year project suddenly became a 3.5-year project, and that meant 2 or 3 years of working on the music, and he did some absolutely amazing work with it. He went up and recorded with a live orchestra up in Salt Lake City, and so we ended up with probably the best soundtrack of any of our games, thanks to Blaze. So, there's good and bad.
yeah.
I remember getting the soundtrack. I actually have the soundtrack CD for Dragonfire in like my messy pile over here.
Yeah.
That's by my desk.
Have you guys ever thought about bringing the documents of your original rules system to light? Sort of maybe as a bonus curio for the Quest of Glory fans, or?
Well, it's
they're kind of a mess.
yeah.
I mean, it's all handwritten, sitting in loose leaf notebooks and so on.
Yeah, it's a concept that we had come up with. We had played similar concepts along the way. I learned to play D&D with a different game system altogether than D&D, and I didn't like the level system of suddenly pop, you suddenly have these abilities. I wanted something that was organic and you built and you grew as you went along, which is much like, the philosophy of the game.
Mm-hmm.
And so we created a system in which case practice does make perfect. You improve as you go along by doing things, and it's very, very organic.
Yeah, so we originally called the system Fantasy Guild, and the idea is that you would, rather than joining a guild like the Glassmakers Guild, is that throughout your career as an adventurer, you would join multiple different guilds, and each one would teach you only their specialties. So we made it so that basically you could get any mixture of skills you wanted, but each time you joined a new guild, there was a major cost for that step. So once you were in there, it was relatively inexpensive to get new abilities relating to that. But you basically had to choose, if you had 10 points to allocate, do you put all 10 of them just into joining a new guild, or do you get 2 or 3 new spells for it?
So when we came to Quest for Glory, we wanted a similar kind of concept, but we didn't want the player to have to do math. I mean, because we didn't want...
What's a computer for, after
Right,
all?
yes. And
The singers in the world, thank you for that.
yes, one of the philosophies that I had going into this game is I wanted the player to be in the game. I wanted him to relate to that character and never think about interface or anything, because it would be so intuitive in a game before there was a chance to do that.
Uh-oh, here's our our call for our D&D game. Where did I put it?
Okay. I don't know.
No?
I will decline.
Yeah. Trying to figure out how to decline here. Oh, it's in Hangouts.
I hear bells in the air.
It's the angels. The angels
I
of
hear
D&D are coming.
music.
It's off somewhere doing it. I don't know where my phone is.
Yeah, your phone is calling. But that's okay.
No,
we're
stop ringing.
What a crazy life. Yep.
Can't
Any rate,
do
yeah.
it. Yeah.
Uh-huh. Okay.
Sorry about that.
Sorry.
Yeah.
So we had a D&D game scheduled for noon. I told him we were doing an interview, and I think I told him we were doing it at noon rather than at 1. And so he said, by 2 we'll be done.
That was my fault when I set up the event page. I forgot that the time was for east, north, south, east, west. Yes, for the west. I have
He
to
forgets
orient
he lives in
myself.
Colorado.
I forget I live in Colorado. What can I say?
And the one running the podcast lives in Oregon.
In Oregon. So Cece and I are in Colorado, and Drew is in Oregon. So one thing that I found very interesting and I love is that in some countries, games like Quest for Glory were considered contraband, banned content.
Well, they were illegal because the Iron Curtain was still in place. You could not ship anything computer-related over the Iron Curtain.
Yeah, for a long time, the Apple II was considered much too high a technology to be allowed to go to Eastern Europe.
And yet, we got a lot of fan mail from over on the other side of the Iron Curtain where people had played our games. They had gotten hold of pirate copies, and here Sierra was always appalled. Pirate copies, we have to have copy protection, we can't let anybody pirate. And our theory was pirates won't buy it. Pirates give you a wider audience, and they'll start to promote it if they like it. Mm-hmm. And you will get, it's karmic, they will help you along the way if you're doing something for them. At least that was the theory. And it turns out that a lot of people behind the Iron Curtain, a lot of people in the Ukraine and in Czechoslovakia, they were playing this game and it made a difference in their lives. And later on, they came and wrote us these beautiful letters of how it affected their lives and gave them hope. These brought them to a different world. They were living in a totalitarian society that we had, we were pretending to be in. We didn't know what it was like to live it. And they were living it. But these games brought them out of it and gave them hope.
Yeah, they said they were real heroes in the games, and they weren't seeing, they were seeing people called heroes that weren't in real life, and that, basically all kinds of terrible things were happening around them. And the games gave them an escape and gave them the idea that, a hero can make a difference in the world.
And we got all sorts of fan letters from all over the world. I just got a comment from somebody yesterday who was from Iran. Good old Iran, who is, scary, scary thing. And here was this wonderful fan letter from Iran. So somebody over there got to play our games, and they love them too. It's a cultural thing that's universal. We all want to be heroes.
Yeah.
We all want to be special, and we all want to make a difference in our lives. And so many of us lose the hope to be that and to be there. And our games help to reinforce this idea that it's little things. It's talking to people. It's trying to get, in Quest for Glory 4, you try to get an old couple that had split back together because they really did care about each other. They just couldn't stand each other. And some of us know what that's like. And so it's little things that is true heroism.
Yeah, if we ever become old, we'll find out if it applies to us.
May you never be old, may you always be young.
Always young. Young is a state of mind.
Absolutely.
Yes.
If you could go back and change any one thing, if anything, about any of your prior games, what would it be?
That's a tough question because it's like a lot of the
Let's see,
things.
which 100 could we change?
Yeah, There were so many things that were out of our ability to do anything.
Yeah, a lot of it's hindsight, in that we might say today we'd change it, but at the time that we couldn't see make any other decision.
And there were
So
we evolved our game's design style too. There were some games that were so critical that you had to do something by this date, or the world ended. I mean, the game was over. And I avoided designing like that, until this newest game, But it's a mistake to do it when the player is lost, and they can't figure it out, and suddenly the world ends, and it's like, what? Wait, what happened? And I preferred to design as what the player does triggers events, rather than there's this locked-in timeline. But it was a good experiment. So
Quest for Glory 2, I would have shipped 6 months later, and done it in VGA 256 color with point and click. Quest for Glory 5, probably would have gone the opposite direction. Would have gone to the aging, deteriorating SCI system, and gotten the game out in 2 years instead of 3.5 years, or should have gotten an off-the-shelf graphics engine that did a good job.
But we didn't have that call. It wasn't our call.
Yeah.
So.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I was involved in the decisions both times. They asked my advice, and both times I made the wrong decision. So, or I made the decision we used. We got game. I can't say it was actually wrong, because we got a game out both times.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and they were good games.
Yes, I remember. The game came out, the Quest for Glory 5 came out in 1998, and I still didn't have a good computer at the time. I still had my Atari 1040 ST by 1998, and I was still playing a lot of those games. Actually, my first Quest for Glory floppies were in tatters by that point. I didn't get a good computer until I came to the United States in 2000, and the first thing I did was buy Dragonfire, Quest for Glory 5, and I loved it. It was
great.
I loved it, and the switch to 3D was a bit jarring at first, but I think it worked very well, and I thought Silmaria looked beautiful, and I actually played it the other day, and I still love it.
Oh, good. Because I loved. I mean, there were parts of it I really loved. I loved the combat system. Actually, all the monsters and things had real AI for a change. They were really behaving, and you could replay it.
5.
5. We're talking 5. And
whereas I played 5 and I died instantly in the combat. That actually probably isn't the game's fault. There was a debug mode that got left in, and when you start up the game, it says, do you want to go into danger or something else? And I chose, I want to go into danger. Well, it immediately put me in combat, something that was probably designed for mid-game toughness.
You died in Quest for Glory 2 too, so we have.
That's true. Quest for Glory 2 VGA, I didn't do so well in either.
Yes.
On the Quest for Glory 2, you have seen, of course, the fan-made remake in VGA.
Right,
Yes.
that's what I'm talking about. Yeah.
Yes, that's the one that killed him off. He can't.
I was having a lovely time until I got into I decided to play the thief, since we're doing a game with a rogue as the main character, and got into the first combat. And discovered that they were making some assumptions that I didn't know about, such as you do not close in combat as a thief. You throw your daggers from a distance. And, of course, you were supposed to have bought more daggers and so on. So I died.
All these things that you should know if you actually designed a game.
And then I discovered how good a job they did with the game. And how good a job they did with the game is that I was so immersed with it I had never saved. So I was 2 hours, an hour or two into play, and I had not saved the game, and I died. So I said, forget this.
That has happened to me. It's a testament to how well it is done when you forget to save, and you're just going, I just want to keep playing. Oh, I died. I just need to restore. Wait.
Yes.
My best friend from middle school, high school, and we've known each other for almost 30 years at this point. Every time I'm watching him play a game, I'm going, save, stop, save. You're going to die.
Yes, we learned that. We couldn't do that in the original games. There was no space for anything left in, like an auto save. But we definitely learned the lesson that you have to put in saved games for people.
Yeah, I remember when we started out, most of our players did not have hard drives. And so that meant that every time you went to a different part of the game, you had to swap floppy disks. If you wanted to save the game, you had to swap to your blank floppy disk.
Yes.
So it was kind of a nightmare to save the game.
It was.
And we had, for our first 3 years, we had to at least handle players that did not have hard drives. I think by the third game, we required a hard drive, but the game still shipped on floppies, and they installed the floppies in the hard drive. That's not quite so bad.
Yeah.
Yes, every game, different situation, different computers, different company practically, because it kept changing so radically. It was always a totally new experience, even though there were 5 games in that series at the same theoretics company.
Same company.
Yeah.
My other minor regret was I always wanted to do a Castle of Dr. Brain port and or additional Dr. Brain games on consoles, and particularly when the Game Boy and other handheld consoles came out. That it really seemed like they were ripe for a puzzle game, but the common wisdom was that brain games don't sell on those. That nobody wants them. All they want is action games. But I think that's been disproven since then. But,
Yes, it has. And speaking of things that have been misproven, now we're moving into the present now with all of the experience that you've had. Now, after 2 years starting development and 2 successful Kickstarters, you've been working on your new game, which is Hero U.
Actually, if you guys want, I do have the recent video for the second Kickstarter queued up. If you want me to go ahead and show that.
Do that.
Okay, everybody go silent for a moment, and we'll be back in about 2 minutes. Hopefully, if I can get this to work. There we go.
Now you know. See how great the game is.
Turn right. There we go. My mic back on. There we go.
Okay, cool.
Oh yeah, I forgot to turn mine on.
Okay, is video still down, or do you have it working again?
Oh, you're back. You're back up. You've been. It's just going down for like a minute, and you guys keep coming back up. So it's
okay.
Yeah,
well,
you're
I'm going
fine.
to risk losing all your carefully framed images here and turn this around.
Oh no, your camera's fine.
Okay, that wall over there. I don't even know if anyone can make it out, but I'm at my parents' house, and my father, for a long time, collected. We sent him box covers and stuff for our games, and he made one entire wall of his office just had all of the box covers for our games. Got us to autograph some of them. No, maybe not. And articles about Quest for Glory and stuff. So you always wonder, how do your parents feel about the stuff you're doing? And I know at least in his case, he was really proud.
That is awesome.
Oh,
That's
that is
Really
really
cool.
awesome.
He's got a little shrine there.
Yeah.
What was the film in which the guy had the shrine was circling all his victims and stuff? That's been done in a few ones.
Yeah.
Yes, we are doing Hero U, Road to Redemption, which is, again, an adventure role-playing kind of game, and it concentrates on one character this time. In our previous games, you had a choice of which character class you could play, and basically all of the characters looked the same because they were the same animation and things, but the games were very different depending upon who you chose to play. The Wizards game had wizard puzzles and different characters you'd meet and interact with, and so on and so forth for the other characters. But in this game, we decided to create a game series that concentrates on a character itself, a la like what Monkey Island did with Guybrush Threepwood and other games like that. And so we have this character called Sean O'Connor, and you get to experience his school semester at the Hero University.
And of course, we originally thought we'd get the first game done in a year and then each sequel done in 6 months. And instead, it's taking about 3 years for the first game. And, sequels are probably going to take a year and a half each.
But they're evolved. We started with a very simple concept. We were going to make a nice little puzzle kind of oriented game with simple graphics and not a lot of storytelling in that. And it got sidetracked right away because the people that were supporting us, the fans that came in and said, I really want to see it, really wanted to see another Quest for Glory. And, they are the people, they're the reason we're doing this. I mean, there are easier ways to make a living. This is not one of them. And so therefore, we decided to create the game they wanted. But of course, it's not going to be the same kind of game they were expecting from Quest for Glory. It is a very different game. It has, there are different. We've had a lot of experiences since we did Quest for Glory, because after all, when we started Quest for Glory, we had no experience. We didn't know what we were doing. We were improvising the whole time. Well, here it is, years since and later, and we're creating this game, and we still don't know what we're doing. But we're improvising, and we're adapting to who we have working for us, the art style of the people that are artists, the programming style. You have to integrate people's abilities, because a game is not just one person dictating to everybody else. It really is the synergy of the team that creates a great game.
Yeah, we sometimes forget how many advantages we had at Sierra. One of them is that the SCI development system that was being used by all the adventure games, had a lot of features. We're doing good animation, good sound effects, made it pretty easy to put a game together. We're working with Unity, which is a very powerful game engine, but it's not optimized for adventure games. It's not optimized for role-playing games. And so we've had to build a lot of stuff on top of that. There was a lot more than we thought. And of course, at Sierra, we had everybody working with us in one place. So we had the whole team together. So you could turn around to somebody and say, do this. And at times the communication got harder there, but it was still better than being across continents.
Yes, we literally have workers in Australia, workers in New Zealand, workers on the East Coast of America, and we're all having to coordinate with times, and it's the coordination of that, and communications is critical.
And it works amazingly well. But the other thing is that there's a little calculation I should have done, which is this thing called an inflation calculation. So if a Sierra game costs $650,000 to develop, you adjust for inflation, all of a sudden, oh, wait a second, that's a $1.2 million game. We didn't budget for that.
So we're making a $1.2 million game on considerably smaller budget.
Smaller budget.
But we're still making it. That's the deal, is that we have not compromised the quality. The graphics are incredible. It is 3D, but it's Quest for Glory 5's 3D engine and artwork look dated now, even more so than the other games. Even the original pixelated games look better than 5 does. But now we're making a game with a 3D engine, and it looks as great as anything we ever got out of Sierra. It's a beautiful background, beautiful thing, and it looks like you're playing an old adventure game, but with the ability to really follow your character as he walks around and moves in this 3D environment.
One of the things that's really hard for us to communicate to fans is that we'll get in artwork and we'll get a concept art painting for an area, and it'll be great, and we'll say, okay, oh, that's beautiful, it's wonderful, but it's not actually usable for a game because there are not areas to walk around. None of the objects are interactable and so on. And then we'll get our 3D artist to work on it, and he'll come back, several weeks later with something that looks absolutely identical to the concept art painting, and people don't understand why we are so excited about having gotten the same thing back three weeks later.
Yeah, looks the same as the first thing you showed. Yeah.
And the answer is that it still looks beautiful, but now it works.
Yeah.
So it's like, cargo called. It's the difference between building a balsa wood mock-up of a 767 versus actually having one that flies.
Now is Hero U, is there a connection to the original Quest for Glory series, or do you still have any of the rights there, or?
We have no rights to Quest for Glory, where they are owned by a different company. However, this is the spiritual descendant of that, and it's in the same world. And it shares it shares a lot of the same philosophies, of course, but it also shares the same universe.
We're able to do little references and jokes and such to Quest for Glory, just as when we did Quest for Glory, we had Monty Python and the Three Stooges, and other than that, making little cameos in the game. So when we do Hero U, of course, we've got all that, but we can also have Quest for Glory jokes in there.
Yes.
Or mentions of a character in Quest for Glory. So you get the feeling that it's the same world, even though it is not a direct sequel. We obviously don't have the licensing for it or anything of that.
And as a result, we moved it off, the areas where you've been to in Quest for Glory, and put it in a different area, but there are still strong ties to the Quest for Glory.
Yeah, we had people saying, well, we want a new Quest for Glory, we want the same setting. We said, well, which setting is that? Every Quest for Glory was in a different setting. So guess what? We have a new game, and it's a new setting. In this case, we haven't moved very far. We moved from the Greek Isles to Sardinia, off of Italy. So we're still in the Mediterranean.
Although you won't know it, because most of this game
is indoors.
Yeah, you're a thief. You start out with a character that wants to be a thief. He's not very successful at being a thief because he gets caught right away. But he gets the choice to go to the Hero University, and the Hero University is this huge castle, an ancient castle, and you're under house arrest. You can't leave the castle, but there are secret doors. There are secret passages. You get to find the hidden ways under the castle, so you're constantly exploring other things. You just don't get a lot of the, you'll just never know you're actually on this beautiful Greek, Mediterranean island. You may not appreciate that part, but.
It's interesting how you play a game. So we've seen speed run-throughs of the Quest for Glory games where they'll play the entire game in like 20 minutes or an hour or something. 5 minutes, I don't know, whatever. And this game, you'll probably be able to do the same thing. You can probably avoid talking to anyone, avoid having any conversations, avoid getting any reputation. In fact, you could probably avoid all the combat areas entirely.
Yes, you can.
And you can probably play through this game in an hour or two. If not,
what's the fun in that?
I know,
but you won't be playing the game.
Yes. Yeah. In this game, we're doing things like it is an adventure role playing. There is combat available. There's much more role playing than we had in previous games. But that role playing part is totally avoidable. If you don't like to play against fighting monsters or risk death because of that, that's what the player wants. The player can do that. They won't see every place. They won't find all the hidden things. They won't get the treasures. They won't get to wear a nifty leather outfit and have buff weapons and magical things, but they don't need that.
You won't have a boyfriend or a girlfriend.
Oh, well, that's too bad.
But if you actually play this game the way it's intended to play, it's probably 15 or 20 hours of play.
Nice.
And it will, it will be replayable. You can do different things, different times. The basic storyline is linear. It takes place over the course of a semester at the university. It's about 2 months long, and each day certain things happen. But what you do during that time is pretty much up to you. You go to class in the morning. That's a given. You can either go to or cut your afternoon, elective class. And then you can decide whether you want to go play pool with your other people, or if you want to go down into the dungeons and fight monsters.
You have all these options of what you want to do with the game. Therefore, there's a lot of replayability, and it's all about how you want Sean's attitude to be. Is he friendly and open and talks to everybody and has all these friends, or is he a snarky, sardonic character who goes around and does his own thing and really wants to be a thief in the end, doesn't care anything what the school is? That's the player's choice. It also allows the player to explore these other, what happens if you take this attitude? How does that change the game? How does it change the relationship you have with other characters? And you have a choice of romances, who you want for a boyfriend or a girlfriend. And how you behave toward them affects whether you can win their hearts.
And how you behave when they're observing you. So... you might be talking to a different character in a room with your potential love interest, and you say something really snarky, and they might get really mad at you for doing that, and that will lower your rep with the other person.
I like that.
Or they might really appreciate the snarkiness and say, "Oh, you dug him a new one. That was pretty good."
Yeah, snarky is a two-edged sword. Yeah. Sometimes you can be too much of a snark, and other times people appreciate that snarkiness. So you have to. That's the scariest route. Friendly gets you anything. Clever. Most people appreciate clever, but snarky is an acquired taste.
And as with every game we've ever done, we never actually know how much of this stuff is going to work when we're done with it. But so far, we've had a pretty good track record. So far, it's tended to work.
Now you've just completed your second Kickstarter. How has the experience on Kickstarter been different between the two of them, and how is that different from when you were with Sierra before?
Well, Kickstarter is a kick. It is really fun. Running one of those campaigns is also incredibly time-consuming, and you've basically got to be devoted, at least 18 hours a day to answering messages from people and stuff like that. The major difference in the two is we got an enormous amount of publicity, free publicity when we did the first one, and the second one was almost invisible. None of the press covered it. We had just a lot less stuff. I think probably about half of the people that contributed to the second Kickstarter were also ones that had contributed to the first one. So one of our goals in that was to bring new people in and show people that we've made tremendous progress in this game. Here's the stuff we're doing with it. Here's what it looks like now, and try to get in new people. But unfortunately, we didn't get a lot of coverage. We did make our goal, which was much more modest than the first one. But between the two, we raised a little over $500,000. Mm-hmm. Sounds like an enormous amount of money until you realize that one senior programmer right now gets between $100,000 or $200,000 a year working for a game company, and we have a team of about 10 people working on it. They're all part-time, but still. So basically where the difference is coming out of our pockets. We're not paying ourselves, and we think this game really has potential. I'm a little terrified about if it goes out there, if we get the same situation of press not covering it, people won't even know it exists. But I think that if the right people find it, they'll love it.
But the Kickstarter thing is also so much you're talking to the people directly. Your fans are directly involved in this. They're giving you feedback immediately, what they like and what they want to see in that. And you, as a game designer, say, yes, this is where we're going with it. This is how we'll adapt to what you're saying. But we're not going to give you exactly what you want. This is not a Quest for Glory game. It is a very different game, and its feel will be different, but you'll have the same kind of heroic experience, or not, because you may not decide to be a hero for this one, but you'll have this kind of involvement in a character and in the characters around you and the people you interact with. And you get all this opening up all these stories as you go along. But the Kickstarter experience allowed us to really get the fans involved in the game and get them to be part of it, so that it isn't an isolated incident and it's just thrown out to the crowd and you played it, it's over. It's an experience, and it's an ongoing experience.
Yeah, one of the critical reviews of Leisure Suit Larry Reloaded commented that the entire game...
That was a game that was done on Kickstarter.
Yeah, that was a game that was done on Kickstarter. And one of the reviews complained that the entire game seems to be like a fan service to the Kickstarter backers because there were so many characters in the game that were people that had backed it and stuff. And in a sense, we have the same thing. We have some of our higher level rewards allowed you to get paintings in the game, a statue in the game, stuff like that.
Ghosts in the game, you know?
Ghosts, yeah. But we think in our game that we've managed to integrate it in so that really makes the game richer. So essentially what we've done is we've gotten all these, instead of trying to write every line ourselves, we've gotten all these fans to build little pieces of the game. So you investigate a painting, and it gives you a close-up of the painting, and it's done in a fantasy style by one of our artists based on a photograph. So it's not a photograph of the person. And it'll give the person's name, and then it'll have a little bit of text they wrote about it. That each one of those is effectively a story starter. Each one of those could be another game all in its own right. So we think it integrates pretty well in ours. But this game is a lot of exploration. It's a lot of talking to people. It is not. There are no puzzles where you have to trick a cat into running through masking tape. That's something actually. When we're doing Quest for Glory, we railed against unfair puzzles and games where you would wander out into the desert and the only way you could explore it was to die multiple times and extend your map. We don't like to do stuff like that. But this game has even less in the way of traditional puzzles than Quest for Glory.
Because it's organic. It really feels like you're experiencing this thing. I'm not a big fan of puzzles in games because they tend to break me out of the universe. Because you have to think as a player, how do I solve this puzzle? And not as the character, how does the character actually behave in this situation?
Mm-hmm.
And all game designers cheat on those. I can tell you it's much easier to create a puzzle for a game than it is to actually solve it. Riddles in games are especially horrific on that. It's basically, we're going way back to, I'm thinking...
What,
Wizardry.
Oh, okay.
Wizardry 2 had
oh, God.
Yeah, the Knight of Diamonds had a series of riddles, and basically they were looking for a particular word or a particular phrase. You had to type it in, spelling it exactly correctly. I'll give a little spoiler for that. One of the riddle answers was the title of the game, The Knight of Diamonds, or was the subtitle. The problem is if you typed in Knight of Diamonds, it didn't work. So I was sure I had the wrong answer because I typed in Knight of Diamonds.
It had to be the Knight of Diamonds.
The Knight of Diamonds.
Right.
Okay, so all computer game puzzles tend to be unfair.
Quest for Camelot had the Conquest of Camelot had that one. I played that when I was a kid. Barely, I was hugely into the Arthurian cycle. So I saw that game and I said it was from Sierra and written by Christy Marks. So I went, I must have this, and I loved the game. Except that as an English language learner, there is one setting where you're going to I think it's Glastonbury Tor, and you encounter this circle of stones that won't let you pass unless you answer a riddle for each stone. I kid you not. As an English language learner, I spent like 3 weeks because this was before the internet, before I could
Yes.
look up cheat sheets, trying to figure out what on earth these crazy stones were trying to get me to guess. And I was like, water? No. And I died so much.
Yeah, there's a reason why we preferred the non-typing kind of games. They are easier, and they take away a lot of puzzles on from the designer's point of view, but
They're fair.
it's fair, and you feel like you're not hitting your head against a puzzle. You're actually dealing with the situation rather than trying to guess a designer's mind.
One of the things, of course, is outside knowledge also. We like to have all the answers to the riddles in the game. But yeah, Christy Marks, when she did that, marvelous screenwriter, and she did a really great job with Conquest of the Longbow and Conquest of the
Oh,
Camelot.
God, yes.
But she was learning as she went along. She was thrust into this situation where she'd never designed a game before, and they said, okay, make a game, put puzzles in it. And we were in the same situation. We had done a lot of D&D games and stuff that are free form, and basically, if you make a mistake as a game master in a D&D game, you can rewind, you can adapt, you can.
But the computer won't adapt.
Computer will do only what you tell it to in advance, and so it's in that sense, it's really hard to make these games. But it's mostly hard because we want the players to be able to do anything the player thinks of. And in practice, we can only do, what we think of, too.
Yeah.
Now, where are you looking ultimately to distribute the game once it's completed? Are you looking at, like, GOG, Steam?
Yes.
Yeah, it'll be on Steam, it'll be on GOG, it'll be on Humble Bundle.
Yes.
We'll also distribute directly from BackerKit, I think.
This is the wonderfulness of the new age, that we can actually not only get it to the players the day we release, we can, if there's any problems, any bugs that people didn't find before, we can actually fix them, and have people get the repaired version. They don't have to wait. Well, in the case of Quest for Glories, they had to wait months to get a new disc for these things. It was horrible in that situation.
However, I can safely say we will not spend millions of dollars in television ads. We will not be. We will not have a 1,000 square foot booth at E3 showing live demos. So discoverability is hard.
And this is why
with
we
indie
reach
games.
out to those fans. Those same fans who supported us are our best advertising agency. And things like this podcast and other things. This is how we reach people. It's like, okay, here's what we've got. Test it, try it, love it, and then share it. Share the knowledge that you really had a great experience with it, and this is something you want to have your friends experience. And that's how we'll actually sell this game. Because our best fans already own the game. They owned it sight unseen from the day one when it looked like, a very, very, very different game. And so they've stuck with us, they've supported us, and we're giving them something that they really, really will love.
So we hope people will talk about it and share it on Facebook and stuff like that, and social media will drive the game. We've got to sell at least X number of copies, or we won't pay back our own bills, let alone make any money. And we want to make a little money, not because we want to get rich, but because we want to have enough money to make the next game.
Yes.
True, very
We're
true.
masochists.
Right.
Cece, you wanted to ask a question about the biggest changes in the industry?
Yeah, so you guys have been making games for a long time. I'm pretty young, so I grew up.
She's the baby of the webcast.
I am the baby of the webcast, and I grew up playing these Sierra games, like being really, really, really confused by King's Quest and stuff because I was, I didn't understand.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the biggest. So what do you think are the biggest changes in the industry since you first started working in games, since you first created Quest for Glory, and how has that affected the development of Hero U?
Really, the internet, the rise of the internet is the biggest thing that's totally altered games. I mean,
Yeah, you have to understand this internet thing did not exist when we were working at Sierra. There was a thing called the ARPANET that predates it. But when we were at Sierra, we were completely isolated. We were not connected in any way to the world. And if people wanted to comment on something, they wrote a letter and sent it by mail. Or they called customer service and paid, they called a toll phone number and paid by the minute to talk to somebody. So They didn't get through to us that way.
Right.
Whereas now communication is close to instantaneous, and it's also 24-hour. We're dealing with backers in Europe and the former Soviet bloc and down under everywhere else.
And we'll be able to get the game out to people the day it's done, and we can have, we have a lot of backers that wanted to beta test it. We'll be able to have it tested thoroughly by people who love it, and we'll be willing to actually put the time in to find these bugs and things like that. And we can be in instant communication with those people we've never met. That's the other one. We're working with people in Australia and New Zealand. We're working with other countries. We're working with people all around the world to create this game, and we've never met any of them. We've never seen these people in real life. Skype and Google Meetings, Hangouts, these are how we've met these people. It's been a system of trust because they don't know us. We're not a real company, I mean, in a lot of senses, and they're giving us time and all their art and their artistic talent. Even if they're programmers, they're really giving us all the art they can give us to create a great game. And that's the real difference, is this could not be made. We couldn't get a job in this industry for Kickstarter until we created it ourselves.
I looked for work for about 5 years prior to doing the Kickstarter and could not get a job. So it's like 10 best-selling games and 20 years of experience and $5 will get you a latte at Starbucks.
Yeah. That's
so
wild.
We're inventing ourselves. We're reinventing the concept of how a game should be, and we're putting all our experience behind it. And it only can be done because of the internet and because of fandom and because of the modern technology.
That's pretty great.
It is.
So you have. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I'm just saying it's awesome. It really is.
So you have several games planned out in the Hero U series. How far ahead do you have these games planned? Like, do you have it to 40 or 5 or 2? Or...
Actually, like Quest for Glory, this is not a serial. I mean, serials have to perpetuate themselves and don't end stories, because if you end stories, you lose interest. No, we're telling, like, we figured it's a quintology or whatever you want to say. We want to go through the classic character classes. We have a thief game, a wizard game, a paladin, and a warrior game. And then we want to have the game where you bring back your characters from all those other games, and they all are in the same game and the same, solving the same kind of problems.
However, just as in Quest for Glory was intended to be 4 games and turned into 5, we've had a lot of requests to do a Bard game, I'm sure.
Yes! Sorry.
As a joke, when we did the yearbook, because we had the yearbook as one of our premiums for the Kickstarter, we decided to make a section for foodies, the culinary school. And we've had people express an interest in having the culinary school game.
So,
Rastafarian school.
Scientist. We certainly could have a scientist game.
We could certainly have the scientist game.
I don't know about a culinary school. I don't know that we can drive an entire game off that.
But we could the science, yes. Well, but our paladin game will have a lot of science in it. So.
If I could make a suggestion, culinary alchemy.
Oh, yeah.
That's true. Alchemy,
yes,
okay,
yes.
we've got the lots of sharp knives.
Gastronomy.
Molecular gastronomy, yeah.
Yeah.
That's true. That's getting into the science, though.
Yeah, well, it's a science of food. So, yeah, we have a lot of potential for having a lot of future games, but we will tell a story that will come to a real conclusion at some point, which ties everything together. And it will not go on forever, but we can always have another school year with different characters and a different storyline. So it's not like we're no planned obsolescence here. We'll be busy for the rest of our lives with this, as long as people love it.
Especially at our age.
Yeah.
That's a deal for me.
But we can also get out of school there, because this whole thing that's set at Hero U is in the larger context of basically in the city you're in. There's all kinds of political machinations going on. There's stuff happening out there in the broader world, and the school just happens to be a focal point. If you watch the Buffy the Vampire TV series, that was based around the whole thing that there was the hellhole was built under the small town where Buffy was going to school, and so all these things converged in that town because of that. We have something similar to that going on at the university. We're in an old castle that was built here for a particular reason.
To cover a hellhole.
Effectively to cover a hellhole. And even though that's been suppressed for a while, it's still there. Its effects still leak out. And things happen in the course of the games that result in some pretty cataclysmic events.
But that doesn't mean we're stuck here. Now,
yeah.
I mean,
so we can get out of school.
We can get out of school. We can go other places. We can have and we can carry the theme and the storytelling can continue, whether the game actually comes to a conclusion or not.
A little postgraduate hero work, a little
Yes.
mastery of hero,
Yes.
doctorate of hero.
Exchange students, you get to go
Hey.
to countries, to other schools. So Harry Potter had the exchange students come to their place. Well,
We'll go
you
there.
get to go to theirs.
Perhaps a little
Yeah.
Liontar.
Yeah.
Well, we talked about Egypt as a possible setting, but
that'd be
Quest
cool.
for Glory, if the series had not ended, rather than continue with the same hero and so on, we were going to go to the next generation and take you out to the Orient. We would have had a game in India, one in China, possibly one in Japan, probably like Thailand, and get out to various Oriental locations.
And new
that would've been
cultures,
fun.
new experiences. Because that's what we're really doing. This is the teaching as a subversive activity. We're broadening people's minds into a culture and a mythology that is endemic to that location, because the world has so many stories that we've been telling forever, and we don't always experience them.
And of course, Lori's been wanting to, back when we were still researching Quest for Glory 5, Lori wanted to go take a cruise to the Greek Isles and experience the culture. And we always had the case where we either didn't have the money for it or we didn't have the time. Currently, we don't have either. So sooner or later, we'll actually get to some of these locations in our games, and they'll be the richer for it.
Okay,
So-
well, I think we should run off pretty soon. So.
Yes.
Okay. One more question?
So you can pick one.
Who, me pick one?
You pick one.
Oh, if you have one.
Okay. I don't have one. We have a whole list of questions that have been sent in to us. So I'm struggling to pick what's the best one. If
Roll one
either of
through
you have a
five.
good idea.
They can be asked these questions on the. This is going to be on YouTube.
Yes.
Yeah.
You can ask these questions on YouTube too, and we'll follow the YouTube and give answers to those people that didn't get their questions handled here.
Possibly a little slow.
Slowly, but yeah.
And people should visit our website, which is www.hero-u.com. And Lori does an occasional designer blog there. We're going to bring back some Quest for Glory stuff to go along with the Hero U stuff there. So we did a series of articles. We used to have a thing called the Quest Log on our School for Heroes website, and we're going to probably republish a few of those and do some new ones.
Yeah.
Well, then I'll pick one of my questions
Yes.
for the last
Okay.
one.
Yes.
Would you ever care to see any of your works done as a movie, a television show, interpretive dance, any other type of media?
Of course we would. We'd
We
love to.
would love to have it done. We might cringe when we saw the results, but but for it to have been done, that would be excellent.
And YouTube, I mean, anybody can make these things nowadays. I want to see people doing mashups, or once we have the video out, they'll be able to take pieces and bits of it and do their own creative work with it, because they did that with our Quest for Glory series. There were a lot of spin-offs and people that made their own games when you can't do that. There was no tools or abilities to it. Well, we welcome people coming in and saying, I want to, this is what I love. I want to take this and go my direction. Fan fiction, fan storytelling, this makes this, a united thing. It makes it a part of other people too. And that's the whole storytelling thing. It isn't just about listening. It's about creating something for yourself by the values and the things that you loved out of what you have seen and experienced.
And then sharing it with others.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we're in the universe of sharing.
Yeah. I have a very last question. I know that you're writing a novel, and that is one of the bases for Hero. Are you ever going to release it? Are you ever going to show it to us?
It depends on my co-writer. I wrote it with a co-writer, and she worked we worked for a year and a half and created a huge book that we had to eventually break down into 2 books. But we were going to do the whole Quest for Glory series retold in a different way. And I don't know if she'll ever get back to me on it. It's for children. It's like Harry Potter.
Have you asked?
Yes, I have.
Okay.
It's for children. It was set at children, as the first book is like a young juvenile. But as the series progressed, the writing style would get more sophisticated. The storytelling would be more sophisticated, just like Harry Potter did. It showed that an audience can grow with your books as well. And I'd like to see it. I think it was a great variation of how the games. It was based off the games, but it didn't tell the same story the way the games did. So I love that. I mean, it's reinventing something and telling new stories.
But it'd be really nice if somebody else did it and we didn't have to do it all.
Yes.
There's
Who
that.
knows? Popularity breeds fandoms, and you got a fandom out there. Just breathe more onto those embers, and let's
Yes.
roaring fires. You know.
There's a lot of writing actually out there.
We want to inspire people. We want people to be inspired to create themselves and to, and take this into their own lives and think about what the values that they have learned and what resonates with their own soul. And then go on and share that with somebody else.
Yeah.
Perfect. Well, I just want to say thank you guys so much for taking the time. I've learned so freaking much. It has been absolutely wonderful.
Yeah.
The video is live on YouTube, but it'll take about probably 10 minutes until it's actually
30 minutes, actually.
What? 30
minutes.
That's okay. We're tied up for the next 4 hours, so we won't see it for a while.
I definitely don't want to deny you your role-playing game, because God knows I don't get to role-play nearly enough. So thank you guys so much for coming out. I'm going to go ahead and flash our little logos here so that everyone can see. If you like what you see here, please hit the magic subscribe button. Support us, listen, follow, join us.
And go to the Hero U website, people.
Go to the Hero.
Yes.
I will make a link in the description when it goes live. Probably about 30 minutes. You'll see it live, and I'll make the link there. If you have more questions for the Coles, please post your questions in the comments. They will circle back around and get you your answers. And we will be back. Are we coming back on Saturday? I thought you guys had. Mouse?
No. I'm not singing with the Metropolitan Opera teacher until the Saturday after that. So Cece and I should be here.
Okay,
Yeah,
so we'll be back next Saturday doing our normal shtick here. And then the week after that, I believe, is TwitchCon. So I will be hosting the show with Mummer on that day. So
You'll be twitching.
And twitching, probably quite a bit. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, Lori, Corey, for coming out. And we'll see you guys next week.
Thanks, everybody.
All right. Bye-bye.
Nice
Thank you.